Hey everyone, in this video I'm gonna talk about efficiency and why that matters. Now, in case you missed it, Polestar announced today the Polestar 3, which is a pretty nice looking car. It's very Volvo, which is kind of in the Model Y segment. But immediately people notice that there are some pretty disturbing figures here, particularly around the battery. So they're using 111 kilowatt hours to get about 350 miles of range EPA. Now these numbers are kilometers and they are WLTP. So when you convert that into EPA, it's about 350 miles, give or take, with a huge battery. For reference, the Model 3 standard range has about 53 kilowatt hours, something like that. So half of that, and it will give you not 300 miles, but like the ballpark. And then if you go to the longer range, which is not available, it will give you about 300 miles. So then people immediately started talking about how inefficient this car is. And I started thinking about that, and one of the things that people comment is like, well, why is efficiency so important? Like, who cares, right? Like, who cares if I need to charge it a bit more? Electricity is cheap. And I think there's a bigger point that people are missing. So this episode is going to be quite spreadsheet intensive, because what I want to do is I want to show you what happens when you change the efficiency of your car by a couple of percentage points, and how that translates all the way down to net profit, and at the end of the day, earnings per share, which in fact results in the stock price. So let's jump into the spreadsheet and do some numbers. Now, for these calculations, I'm gonna use the Model 3 Standard Range Plus because it's the car I have, and I do know these numbers pretty well. So let's use that as a reference. This is I don't want you to get too hung up on the numbers. I just want you to notice the overall trend and what happens when you change the efficiency. So the numbers don't matter that much. What matters is the trend. So let's start with a Model 3 standard range, and let's say you're shooting for 450 kilometers of range, which is pretty much what the Model 3 standard range has in real life. Now, I do know the efficiency of my car because this is what I get driving the Model 3 on the highway and city combined. I get about like 130 watts per kilometer, which in fact translates to 7.69, nice, kilometers per kilowatt hours. So if you say, okay, I want to have 450 kilometers of range with this efficiency, how big should the battery be? So in that case, you just do this math, and that gives you the size of the pack, which is about 59, something like that. We don't quite know how big the Model 3 battery is, but it's in that ballpark. Some people say 53, some people say 60. There's a reserve, like we don't really know, but it's in that ballpark. So now let's have a look at the cost of this battery. We've heard comments from Elon and Sandy Monroe that the cost should be somewhere around $100 per kilowatt hour. So let's just take that number, just for reference. So now we know how big of a battery we need for a given range. Now let's see what happens to the cost. How much would that battery cost? So pretty straightforward. You just multiply size times the cost of the battery per kilowatt hour. That gives you the total cost in dollar amounts per car. Now what I want to do here is I want to split the cost of making a car in the cost of the battery and the cost of everything else. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the battery and see how that changes, but the rest of the car should remain the same. In this case, what I'm doing is from previous Tesla financial statements, you can see the cost per car is about $36,000, give or take. But that's the whole mix. That includes Model S, Model X, Model Y, standard range, long range, performance. So let's assume that the Model 3 standard range is about $33,000 in total, the cost of making the car, give or take. Again, use your own numbers if you don't like this one. But essentially, if 33 grand is the total cost and we deduct the cost of the battery that we just calculated, then that gives us 27 grand for the other components of the car, which comes up to a total of 33. That's the cost of making the car. So how much money are we gonna make on the car? Let's say we sell it for 42. Use your own numbers, but if you go to the US version of the Model 3, it's about 40 grand. If you go to the Australian version, which is where I live, it's about 65, which 65 converted to USD, it's about 41. So yeah, similar in Australia and the US, it's about $40,000. Now some people upgrade the paint, some people upgrade the wheels, some people use the white interior. So, you know, let's say you're selling for 42, something like that. So now you have the cost, you have the selling price, you can calculate the gross margin. This is the dollar amount you make per car. So selling price minus the cost. Pretty straightforward again. And then you can do the same thing as a percentage, which is around 27, which is ballpark what Tesla's getting. So this tells us that we're somewhere in the on the right tracks. Okay, so now we know for a given battery and for a given efficiency how much money we make per car. So then the question is, okay, how many cars can we make? How much money we make in total? And then it turns out, and this is important, the total amount you're gonna make is gonna be gross margin per car times the amount of cars you make. Now we are entering a future in which the batteries are going to be the limiting factor, and this is really important. So if you as a car company you wanna grow, it's not like you can grow all you want, because first you're gonna need to secure the batteries, and you also gonna need to secure the raw materials, which we already know that's gonna be the bottlenecks for many years to come. So it's not like you can make as many cars as you want. So you're gonna be constrained by the battery supply. That's gonna drive your number of cars you make. And this is something you cannot change easily. That's just the industry, what's available, how many mines are operational, how much battery supply you have secured using contracts and things like that. So this number is gonna be quite handy, as you're gonna see later, because as we change the size of the battery, this number will determine how many cars we make. So for this example, I just chose 150 gigawatt hour of supply. Again, just random number, use your own, it doesn't really matter. But then essentially this tells us that for this given supply of battery and for this battery size, we can make about 2.5 million cars, which, you know, if Tesla were to make only Model 3 standard range in 2023, it would be something like that, ballpark figure. So now we know how many cars we make. Now we know how much money we make per car. We can calculate gross profit in total, which is multiplying those two. So far, so good. Now, let's have a look at what happens when let's say we create a Model 3 knockoff, right? We are the competition, the so-called competition that is coming. And let's say everything is exactly the same, except the efficiency. Now this new car we're making is actually 5% less efficient than the Model 3. Hypothetical scenario. So we're shooting for the same range, but our efficiency, as you can see, is a bit lower, 5% lower. And essentially that translates into us needing a bigger battery to accommodate for the same range, given the lower efficiency. So there's that. We're gonna need a bigger battery. Now, assuming the competition has the same cost per kilowatt hour as Tesla, which is, you can debate that, but let's not get there. Let's assume it's the same. Let's assume batteries are a commodity. Everyone has the same cost. So then, also let's assume that the cost of making the car, the rest of the components, is exactly the same. The only difference is going to be that the total cost of the pack is going to be higher just because the pack is bigger. That's the only difference here. All the other assumptions are the same. So essentially that translates into a higher total cost of making the car. Let's assume same selling price. Essentially translates into a lower gross margin. You make less money per car just because you have a bigger battery. And here you can see how the gross margin is starting to suffer. Went from 27.27 to 26.10. Not a big deal, you will say, just 1%, not the end of the world. Now let's assume you're also battery constrained, which you're gonna be. And let's assume you managed to secure the same supply as Tesla, which is another point that you can argue about. The second effect of having a less efficient car is that your battery is bigger and therefore you can make less cars because you have the same supply and you need more batteries per car. So the number of cars you can make is actually lower. It drops too. So this actually has a pretty interesting effect because now you multiply money per car, which is lower, times cars sold, which is also lower. So it's lower times lower is lower square. Not exactly square, but it's in that direction. So here you can see that your gross profit is actually starting to drop. By the way, this is $1 billion in total, which is interesting. Now let's have a look at how much that dropped. If you just drop the efficiency 5%, your gross profit, right? Your total earnings, your earnings per share, actually dropped by 8%. So this is not linear. Just having 5% less efficiency means your gross profit is about 8% lower. Now let's keep going. Let's say you're 10% less efficient. What happens then? Same type of scenario. You can pause the video and look at the numbers if you want. But essentially, now your gross margin went from 27 to about 25. Your gross profit in dollar amounts went from 23 to 19. And your gross profit as a percentage dropped 16%, right? So your earnings as a company dropped. Actually, this is not even earnings. This is before. This is gross profit. We're going to have a look at earnings later. Let's keep going. Let's go wild. What if your car is actually 20% less efficient? And this would be, like pretty aggressive looking car, like one of those BMWs that look like a beaver. They have like a pretty inefficient shape. So it's conceivable that you will have like 20% lower efficiency, which will mean that you need a battery pack that is 73 kilowatt hours. So that's not unheard of. We've seen examples like that. So that basically means that your gross margin drops to about 25. Have a look at what's happening with the number of cars you can make. So given a fixed supply of batteries, you went from making 2.5 millions to making only 2 millions. So that's quite a significant drop just because your car is less efficient. Look what happened to your profit, your gross profit. Boom, from 23 to 18. And essentially you lost 24% of your gross profit. Now, that is not the end of the story, because the income statement doesn't end in gross profit. You actually have to discount the operating expenses and taxes and things like that. But just to keep it simple, let's just discount the operating expenses. And in this example, I'm using 7 billions. Why? Because that's what Tesla spent in 2021. In the full year was about 7 billions. And in 2022, looks like it's on track to doing 7 billions again. If you don't like it, that's fine. Put your own number. Doesn't really matter. Just want to show you what happens to the operating leverage when how it works in the opposite direction. So now your net profit is pretty much gross profit minus OPEX. And here you can see how you go from 16 to 11. So the amount that you drop as a percentage in the net profit line is actually even more significant. So this, I just want you to stop here and have a look at this. If your efficiency is 20% lower because your engineering sucks and your car is just less efficient, then your gross profit is going to be 21% lower. And your net profit, this is the earnings per share, this is what matters, is actually going to be 35% lower, just because your design is not good. And now to really hammer this point, let's look at what happens if your efficiency is actually better. What happens if, you find a way to make your car more efficient and you send that as an over-the-air software update or something. What happens if you actually make a car that is lighter because you're eliminating parts, and just like for some reason you make it 10% better? Now you need a smaller battery. Instead of 59, you need 53. So now, instead of making 2.5 millions, you can actually make 2.8. And because the battery is smaller, then the cost is smaller, so then the amount of money you make per car is bigger. So when you start multiplying these things, you can see that the net profit goes up 41%. Just because you increase the efficiency 10%, it goes up 41. Now let's play around. Let's say it's only 5%. What happens there? If it's only 5% more efficient, your net profit, this is your bottom line, goes up by like, let's call it 30%. So this is insane. This is ridiculous. This is why efficiency matters so much. And who has the most efficient cars? Well, you're gonna say Lucid, yes, but they make like 5 cars. But then it's Tesla. The Tesla standard range from China with the LFP battery, it's like crazy efficient. The efficiency of that car it's just crazy. And that's the one I have, and I'm telling you, those numbers are real. Those are the numbers I see. So I just want you to really stop and think about this. So we hear that the competition is coming, and we are seeing the competition coming. The Polestar shot just came here. This is supposed to be a Tesla killer. This is supposed to be a very compelling alternative to the Model Y. And you know what? Fine, if they want to make it and sell it, let them sell it. But as an investment, as a company, how much money are they gonna make? If they're like, let's say they're 20% less efficient, they're gonna make 34% less money than Tesla. That's just like not a good investment in my mind. And then the other component you have there, if you really want to get into more detailed forecast, is like, you really think that Polestar is going to have the same cost per kilowatt hour of battery as Tesla? Do you think they're going to have the same? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say they're going to have like 120 or something like that. And then, assuming they're going to sell the car for the same price, which they're not, they're going to have to sell it for a higher price. But if you assume it's the same price, then look what happens at the net profit. It just drops like dramatically. And let's assume they can secure less batteries. Let's assume just for whatever reason they can secure just half. No, let's be generous. 100. Look what happens, right? And OPEX. I don't know if you've seen the financials of Rivian, but like Rivian is like quite inefficient in terms of OPEX. So let's bump this to 10. See what happens. Now look at the net profit. This is just ridiculous. At this point, this company is losing money. It's making 1.3 cars and they're losing money. Just because of the efficiency, the battery supply, the OPEX, and the cost of the battery. Just those things send you the other way, make you lose money instead of making money. So, when people talk about the competition is coming, that's fine. Let them come. No worries at all. The market is big. There's plenty of room for everyone. The future is going to be electric. There's no question about it. Anyone making an electric car is going to sell every single car they make. The question to me is how much money they're going to make on those cars. And just looking at this, I think they're not going to make much money. But they're going to have to make money. So they're going to tweak this thing here, the selling price. And so the average price of electric cars is just gonna go up. And Tesla, having the benefit of efficiency, having the benefit of lower battery cost, and just having, I think this is also, Tesla's gonna be lower. The benefit of like structural packs and from casting, rear casting, all of that. It's just gonna be like a walk in the park, right? And people are worried today about the September number in China of how many cars they sold. You know what? That doesn't matter. Just look into the future. Like, do you think that the demand for electric cars is gonna collapse? Do you think people are gonna like just stop buying electric cars? No. Might be a little bit of weakness now or not, like who knows, might be a bit of a recession. Yeah, but like look at the future. Who's in the best position to profit in that future? It's just like, this is like so telling. And then you know what, on top of that, add some software like margin, some subscription, and it's just like really game over. Anyways, I want to leave you guys with that. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I'm trying to create content that other channels are not covering. There's a lot of people talking about the qualitative Tesla as a business, which I get and I really appreciate a lot, but there's already too many channels. So I'm trying to cover the gaps there, things that other people are not talking about. And I just thought that this battery efficiency topic was really interesting. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.